Have you ever wondered, how could a man sitting in a small room, full of papers, next to a flickering candle, turn the world upside down? Karl Marx, a name that millions of people hail as a genius revolutionary, but many people also consider him the source of all political crises. He was the man who turned simple questions about work, money, and injustice into an ideology that changed human history. But wait, Karl Marx himself, who called for the overthrow of the capitalist world, lived on a pension from his close friends. One person calls for equal distribution of wealth, but never has a separate economy to test his theory. In this video, we will unpack the strange contradictions, controversial ideas, and huge legacy that Marx left behind. Is he a genius who predicts the future, or just a philosopher with too much ambition? Let's explore. And maybe you won't see the world the same way again. Welcome to Faces of History. Here we uncover fascinating stories from the past and dive into the lives of legendary figures who shaped the course of world history. If you're passionate about history and the incredible journeys of those who made it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos. Let's embark on this inspiring journey through time together. Life and biography of Karl Marx. Karl Marx was born on May 5, 1818 in Trier, a small town in Germany that, at the time, no one thought would become the hometown of the father of communism. As the son of a lawyer, Marx was expected to follow the traditional path: study hard, get a degree, and get a steady job to support his family. But of course, Karl Marx was not the type to follow the beaten path. From a young age, Marx showed that he had an extraordinary intellect and a somewhat difficult personality. He loves arguing, especially arguing to prove he is always right. While studying at the University of Bonn, he quickly became famous not for his grades, but for his parties and sword fights with his classmates. It seems that, for Marx, fighting was instinctive from the beginning. However, when he transferred to the University of Berlin, Marx began to take philosophy more seriously. He was fascinated by the ideas of Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, a man Marx admired so much that he decided, "I will change the world by improving his theory." And that's when it all started. Marx spent most of his time in the library studying philosophy, economics, and history. Perhaps you will think, wow, such an intelligent and diligent person will definitely be a great success. But no, Karl Marx's life was not easy. When entering adulthood, Marx met and fell in love with Jenny von Westphalen, a beautiful lady from the upper class. They got married despite opposition from Jenny's family for a very simple reason. They did not believe Marx was capable of supporting his wife and children, and unfortunately, they were right. Marx's life was a series of days of running away, living in exile, and often being in debt. He moved from Germany to France, then Belgium, and finally settled in London. There, he lived in a cramped apartment where the family had to scrape together every penny to survive. It sounds sad, but Marx never gave up. He believes that the difficulties he experienced are only a small part of the big picture of history. With financial support from his close friend Friedrich Engels, whom many joked was Marx's personal banker, he continued to write and research. Karl Marx died in 1883, poor and virtually unknown. However, just a few decades later, his ideas became the flagship of revolutionary movements around the world. So Marx's life can be summed up in one quip. He fought for the equal rights of everyone except himself. But does this life full of contradictions reduce the value of Marx's ideology? That is another story that we will explore further in this video. Thought and theory of Karl Marx. If Karl Marx had a microphone and a modern stage, he would probably open with a sentence like, "Ladies and gentlemen, this world is a big stage, and here there are only two main actors, the exploiting class and the exploited class. Today, I will tell you how to destroy that stage." 1. Historical materialism, viewing history through an economic perspective. According to Marx, history is not the story of kings, queens, or epic wars. Instead, history is a long series of economic quarrels. He argued that every society is built on an economic foundation, or infrastructure, and it is this foundation that determines everything, from laws to politics to even culture or superstructure. Marx believed that conflict between classes, that is, between those who controlled property and those who worked, was the main driving force of history. He called this class struggle, and according to him, this struggle will only end when we completely abolish class. 2. The Communist Manifesto, the story of a classless society. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels eloquently declared, "Workers of the world, unite." Sounds like the slogan of a protest, right? They believe that revolution is the only way to eliminate injustice. Instead of a small group owning all the property, Marx dreamed of a society where wealth was shared equally, with no one exploiting anyone else. What's interesting here is that Marx called on workers to revolt, but he spent most of his time in the library writing books. Perhaps he thinks that class struggle begins with reading class books. 3. Capitalism, an epic of exploitation. Capitalism is Marx's most complex work, where he analyzes how capitalism works. According to Marx, the capitalist system is based on a dark secret: surplus value. This is how employers exploit workers. They pay workers less than the value they create, then keep the rest as profit. Imagine working for 8 hours, but only being paid for 4. Marx called that exploitation, and he did not hesitate to conclude, capitalism is like a vampire. It lives by sucking the blood of workers. 4. Contradictions and collapse of capital. Marx predicted that capitalism would destroy itself because it contained irresolvable contradictions. He argued that when profit becomes the ultimate goal, competition will push businesses to step on each other to survive. This will lead to economic crisis and worker discontent, and eventually revolution will break out. However, if you look at today's world, it seems that the capitalist system is still living well. Some people say that Marx underestimated the adaptive capacity of capitalism, but there are also those who think that the injustices he pointed out are still true. 5. A big vision. But where is the reality? Marx was very good at criticizing, but he did not offer a specific plan to build a communist society. The question, after the revolution is successful, what will we do next, is still open. Perhaps Marx believed that if the old system was overthrown, people would know what to do. Actually, not exactly the best idea, right? Karl Marx's global influence. If Karl Marx had known that his ideas, written in a cramped room with candlelight and a musty smell, could change the world, he might have asked Engels to buy them for him, a nicer office. But the truth is, Marx's ideas went beyond his own imagination, from inspiring revolutions to becoming the theoretical foundation of nations and political movements. 1. From library to revolution. Marx may not have held a gun, but his books have become weapons for countless revolutions around the world. Just look at the history of the 20th century. You will see the name Marx associated with a series of shocking events, from the Russian Revolution in 1917, the birth of the Soviet Union, to communist movements in China, Cuba, and Vietnam. However, let's be clear, Marx wrote about the ideal of a classless, non-oppressive society. But in reality, those who use his ideas often add their own spices, turning the theory into versions that are not always beautiful. 2. The labor movement. Is Marx the hero of the workers? Marx's ideas are not only found in difficult philosophical books, but also come into real life through labor movements. Unions, labor laws, and even the concept of weekends off all owe something to Marx. In other words, if you're enjoying a long vacation, give a small thanks to Marx for helping lay the foundation for the fight for workers' rights. But don't forget, many bosses today will silently curse Marx every time workers ask for a raise or a reduction in working hours. Perhaps they thought, Marx, you left behind the most troublesome legacy in human history. 3. Marxist thought and politics. Not only revolutionary movements, Marx's ideas also penetrated economic and political policies globally. Some countries have adopted a completely Marxist economic model, such as the Soviet Union or China in the early stages. Result? Some places achieved great achievements, such as bringing the poor out of poverty, but there were also places that experienced terrible economic and humanitarian disasters. Someone said, Marx's thought is like a hammer. If used correctly, it builds the whole building, but if used wrongly, it can destroy everything. 4. Influence on culture. Marx was not only a political icon, but also a cultural figure. You can find his image on t-shirts, posters, and even memes on social media. He became a symbol of protest and critical thinking, even though sometimes the people who used his image didn't quite understand what he was saying. And let's not forget something interesting. Marx's ideas have inspired writers, artists, and filmmakers alike. But perhaps Marx never expected that he would become a pop culture icon in the modern world. 5. A great but controversial legacy. Interestingly and ironically, Marx's ideas are both revered as a salvation and criticized as a disaster. His supporters call him a revolutionary genius who pointed out the profound injustices of the capitalist system. Meanwhile, opponents criticized him as a desk-sitting theorist with unrealistic and risky ideas. Controversies and criticism of Karl Marx. If there's one thing that Karl Marx certainly achieved, it was his ability to keep people arguing for centuries after his death. To some, he was a prophet of revolution. To others, he was just a desk dreamer with dangerous ideas. But no matter what, the name Marx is always the focus of endless debates. 1. Theory or reality? Easy to say, difficult to do. One of the biggest criticisms of Marx is the vagueness of his theory. He painted a beautiful picture of a classless society where everyone lived in harmony and wealth was divided equally. Sounds ideal, right? But the problem is that Marx never specifically explains how to achieve that. Imagine this. You buy a baking guide, but the author skips the recipe. Instead, he simply wrote, "Let's make cakes without an oven." It is not surprising that many people criticize that Marx was good at theory, but not practical. Critics say his theory is like a map to the treasure, but without directions. 2. Stray. Applications. Did Marx really want this? Marx's ideas were used as the basis for many revolutionary movements, but the results were not always as advertised. From the Soviet Union to China, leaders declared allegiance to Marx but applied his ideas to extremes, leading to humanitarian disasters such as famine, war, and political repression. Critics ask, did Marx imagine forced labor camps or mass purges when he wrote the Communist Manifesto? It's hard to know for sure, but what is clear is that his ideas have been horribly distorted in practice. 3. Personal conflict. Is he really a good communist? Marx spent his whole life calling on workers to stand up against injustice, but he himself lived on the money of Friedrich Engels, a rich capitalist. Even the Marx family had to rely on subsidies from friends to get by. He criticized inequality, but hired a maid without paying him a full salary. Yes, you read that right. This caused many people to criticize that Marx was a man who spoke morality but lived like a capitalist. They even joked, Marx was not only a great communist theorist, but also an expert at spending other people's money. 4. Forecasting error. Is capitalism dead? Marx predicted that capitalism would collapse under its own weight. According to him, competition and exploitation will lead to an inevitable economic crisis. But in reality, capitalism not only survived, but also developed and even adapted to solve many of the problems that Marx pointed out. Opponents often quip, Marx is like a meteorologist predicting rainstorms, but forgetting that people can build umbrellas in sturdy houses. 5. Philosophical critiques. Is everything economic? Marx believed that economics is the determining factor in everything in society, but many philosophical critics think this is too simplistic. They argue that culture, religion, and politics also play important roles. Marx considered all of this a superstructure, just a result of the economic base. This has led some to feel that Marx ignored the complexity of human society. Karl Marx left behind a huge but also controversial legacy. Supporters say he exposed the injustices of capitalism and inspired millions to fight for their rights. But opponents see him as the source of the disasters of the 20th century. Philosophical vision of Karl Marx. If you think Karl Marx was just an economist or a revolutionary, think again. He is also a philosopher with a broad vision, where he combines philosophy, history, economics, and a little rebellious attitude. Marx's philosophical vision lies not only in criticizing current society, but also in dreaming of a future that he believes is better, even if the plan to achieve it seems a bit fuzzy. 1. Learn from Hegel, but do everything the opposite. Karl Marx began his philosophical career by being fascinated by Hegel, who created dialectical philosophy, a way of viewing the world as a process of constant change. But Marx did not like Hegel's focus on spirit and abstract ideas, so he decided to overthrow Hegel by placing everything on the economy. According to Marx, it is not ideas or religion that determine society, but the economic basis, that is, how we produce and distribute wealth. Think of this as a building. The economy is the foundation, infrastructure, and culture, law, and religion are just the roof and walls, superstructure. Marx said, if you want to change society, start with the economy. It sounds reasonable, but just like when repairing a house's foundation, this is not simple. 2. People in society, victims of exploitation. Marx had a rather gloomy view of life under capitalism. He believes that people are alienated, a philosophical concept that sounds complicated but is actually very everyday. According to Marx, when you spend all day doing a boring job you don't like, just to make money to pay the bills, you are alienated from yourself. Think about it. You are a chef, but instead of creating delicious dishes, you have to fry potatoes for 8 hours a day. Marx said, capitalism turns us into cogs in a big machine, where your value is measured only by your productivity. A profound criticism, but also causing many people to not in agreement. 3. Materialist dialectics. Class struggle is the dynamics of history. If there was a mantra that Marx often repeated, it was, class struggle is the driving force of history. According to him, human history is a long series of conflicts between classes: slave owners and slaves, lords and peasants, bourgeois and proletarians. Marx believed that class struggle was not just a phenomenon, but a natural law of history. But what is interesting is that he did not see this struggle as a tragedy. On the contrary, he saw it as an opportunity to change society. Marx was like a strategic advisor, always ready to point out a problem, but not offer a detailed plan to solve it. 4. Vision of the future, a classless world. Marx dreamed of a society where everyone was equal, there were no class divisions, and wealth was divided equally. This is his core vision, a world without exploitation, where people work not for survival, but for joy and creativity. But let's admit it, Marx was good at drawing a beautiful vision, but he didn't provide a clear blueprint for getting there. Critics often joke, Marx is like an architect drawing a house without technical drawings. Someone will have to figure out how to build it themselves. 5. Criticism of religion, the opium of the people. Part of Marx's philosophical vision was a critique of religion. He called religion the opium of the people, not because he hated religion, but because he thought religion made people accept injustice. According to Marx, instead of fighting to change society, people often resign and wait for rewards in the afterlife. However, this view has caused Marx to be criticized by many people. Some people say he is too cold, ignoring the spiritual significance and comfort that religion brings to billions of people. Karl Marx left behind a great philosophical vision, but also full of controversy. Supporters say he laid the foundation for modern critical thinking, helping us clearly see injustice in society. But opponents say he is too radical and that his vision cannot be applied in practice. So we have explored the life, thoughts, and heated controversies surrounding Karl Marx, one of the most influential figures in human history. From a small room in London, he laid the foundation for revolutions that changed the world, but also left many questions that were not easy to answer. Is Marx's thought a vision for a better future? Or just a dream full of contradictions? Whether we love it or hate it, it cannot be denied that Karl Marx forced us to look deeply at the core problems of society: injustice, exploitation, and the role of each individual in the economic machine. And perhaps the greatest lesson we can draw from him lies not in outright belief or disapproval, but in the ability to question and think critically, a skill that, like Marx, we will need in this ever-changing world. And you, What do you think about Karl Marx and his ideas? A genius, a dreamer, or both? Please leave your opinion in the comments section. And if you find this video interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share to spread inspiring historical stories. See you in the next videos, where we will continue to explore the characters who changed the world in one way or another. Hello, and see you again.